Welcome to the show, Margot. Once again, I'm so glad to have you back.
I am so honored to be back.
Your skin is glowing. Your outfit is really cute. We have fun plans tonight.
We do.
I actually need to talk to you after this about what you're going to wear because I don't know. So we'll get there.
Yeah, that's a problem for me. I can't visualize outfits, so I'm going to probably have to send you a picture. I try on like every possible outfit in my closet, and then I go back to the first one.
Okay, I actually, if I ever try on more than one, I normally don't because I'm like lazy when it comes to getting ready. I always end up going back to the first one, and I only ever plan or think of outfits in advance when I'm traveling because I have to. I have a suitcase of clothes.
Right.
So I don't really have an option, but it's going to be fine.
Well, feel free to come into my closet, borrow whatever you want.
Perfect. Literally. I'll be like, happy birthday, Keaton.
Yeah.
Okay, so Margot so kindly actually outlined this episode for me on accident, but I texted her this morning and I was like, hey, because with our episode, I've already had you on. So I wanted us to talk about what you're currently, like, thoughts that you're having. I feel like we go through, like, I always feel like what you're saying is what I'm already going through at that time. So I was like, whatever you have to say, I'll probably be like, yeah, that's perfect. I would love for this. So I texted her this morning and I literally said, what are a few things going through your mind right now? And then she sent back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And we're just going to like go down the list.
I'm so excited. I'm such a list girl. So when you sent that, I was like, get my brain into list mode and go, go, go. And that's actually so funny that you say that about like when I'm talking about things, you feel like you're feeling it too, because with my podcast, at least, my topics, whenever I explain what I talk about to people, I'm like, it's a very selfish venture because whatever I'm going through at that moment or month or whatever it is, I will hone down and seek out everyone who I think can help me. And then I just talk about it. And it seems to be pretty like socially relevant when I look at the like landscape. So yeah, hopefully this stuff is relevant for you right now also.
That's how I feel about my show. People are like, how do you decide on guests? I'm like, it's literally it's either my friends or what I'm interested in at that time. Yeah. And then I just learn more about it. And then thankfully, people just happen to relate to it.
There you go.
But it is a very selfish thing. It's really fully, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to learn about that, you know?
It just works out in our favor. It's mutually beneficial, I like to think, but yes. Yeah, definitely beneficial.
Yeah, I tell myself it's mutually beneficial. I'm like pretty sure that.
Yeah,
that's how I sleep at night.
Yeah, if it's not, guys, just let us know.
Yeah, just maybe or maybe don't.
Yeah, maybe don't.
Yeah,
we're having fun.
Yes. Okay, so I want to talk about. This is a really good one. I actually know that a lot of people will relate to this, but the pressure on phases of life and just basically trying to live your life like what you think 22 needs to be or what society tells you need to be at 22.
Yeah. This is such – so I graduated college in 2020 and post-grad was like such a thing. And it was – I feel like post-grad is like the first year after you graduate, or at least that's how I kind of looked at it. And it was like, okay, post-grad is going to be a weird year. I'm going to kind of be in like a funk and not really know what I want to do. And then after that year, it's like, okay, you're in this like entry-level position of your career and you should be setting yourself up and creating this really solid foundation and doing all this stuff. And then by the time you get to this point or when you meet these people, this is what you do. And I don't know if I put the pressure on myself or if I feel like it's coming externally. It's probably a balance of both. But it honestly sucks, and I'm trying to step away from that pressure of the phases. And I'm curious if you feel that way too.
Yes.
But I find it so much harder to be present and grateful and mindful of what's happening now. I just read The Power of Now. Well, that's a lie. I'm halfway through. I can't get myself to finish it. It's a tough read. But it's so hard to do that sometimes and just be so in the moment when you feel all this pressure to be in a specific phase, which is like fake. Like what even does that mean? But I'm curious if you have had that feeling also.
Yes. Well, one, I didn't expect post-grad to hit me the way that it did because I, one, don't have a traditional conventional job, and two, my college experience was very unique and I didn't have to find a job after college. So I didn't think that I would go through a weird post-grad phase, but I definitely did. And I think I don't even know if it was necessarily post-grad. I think school for me was kind of like a safety net. I'm like, oh, well, I'm still in college. But also that year, a lot of things changed in my life. So it's probably a mix between the two. But it definitely really, like, shook me. Like, I felt really weird. I talked to friends at home, and I feel kind of even selfish for saying I felt weird about it because I had a job, and they were looking for jobs and things like that. But I hear them talking about it, and I'm like, it's really common, but I don't think it's a conversation that's had enough.
I think so much of it comes down to identity. And
yes,
I felt this way so much when I had recently graduated. And I mean, I still do. And that's why I made my podcast. And I've heard people talking about it on different podcasts or TikTok or whatever it is, where it's this identity that you lose, and you grew up with this like student identity, and that's what you are. And it's pretty all encompassing. Like when you think about it, it's, you know, how you can excel or say that you're doing well is your grades or what projects you're working on or courses or schools or whatever. It's your social life. For me, at least, it was physically where I was living. I was in this like bubble of just people in the same experience as me. So that's all just stripped away from you. And when you don't have that student identity anymore, it's like, okay, like what am I? And I think that's part of the thing with the phases is I'm like, am I what my career is? Because I'm really excited about what I'm working on and like upskilling and, you know, exploring my career, but I don't know if I want that to be my whole identity. But if I'm young, does it have to be? It's like such a weird phase to be in.
Mm-hmm. And I've definitely struggled with finding my identity in work before. It's never been the numbers on the screen, but it was like almost like work ethic. Like I know I work hard. I like achieving, things like that. So I'd always struggled with that before. And now something that I've just been, I feel like talking about a lot this week, but just thinking about and being really intentional, which came from a conversation actually with Danny, but I just really had to be careful with who I talk to because if I am around people who really truly find their whole entire identity in work and nothing else, it's easy for me to feel like I need to do that and that I'm not working enough or doing enough because that's how they live their lives. And for some reason, it's like almost like a trigger point. I don't really like the term trigger, but I know there's certain things that are not good for me to be around. But on the other end, I'm so unbelievably bored by people who like only have their work to talk about. Yeah. Like that's so boring and not, in my opinion, like that's just not what I want to be. So it's definitely, it's also weird. Have you read The Defining Decade?
I've like done research on it, but I've not read it.
It's a very like controversial book. There was parts of it that I really liked though. And they talk about this concept, which is identity capital. And essentially, she's saying, you know, use your 20s to your benefit and also explore hobbies and interests that you have. And the more, and at the end of the day, like, I don't think it's good to find your identity, for me personally, in anything outside of, like, myself and, like, whatever I find to be true for me. But she was just saying, you know, with identity capital, as you find hobbies and things that you're interested in, each thing is, like, a little bit more identity capital. And that's kind of how you build who you are. And that has been kind of freeing to me because I'm like, I don't have to, just be one thing. And I think sometimes I struggle with feeling like I need to fit into like a certain mold or box, which we've talked about before.
Yes.
Like with Catch-22?
Yeah.
Yes, Gen Z Catch-22. And then also just, I don't know, it's okay to be different and have different interests and they don't have to always align with who you're around. But identity capital definitely really... it helped me to also push me to actually explore random things that I'm not going to monetize. Like I always give this example. I'm really into brain health, but I'm never going to make money from brain health. Like I'm interested in having people on the show who are experts in that field and I like reading books about it, but it's just like a random thing that I'm interested in and that I give myself time to like look into.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a healthy thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so what you're saying reminds me of two things. One is the Gen Z Catch-22, which we talked about last time I was on, and I talked about in the first episode of my podcast, where it's basically this struggle to balance on one side feeling like as a Gen Zer you have to brand yourself and like easily sell yourself to people and say, this is who I am wrapped in a string, and I can like sell myself to all these different industries, and it's like easy to digest who I am as like a person or a brand, which when you think about it is like pretty fucked up. You know, that's like such a new way of thinking, and I'll get back to that and how there's like, you know, benefits to that, but that's one side. And the other side is being so young. I mean, if you're Gen Z, you're young, and feeling like what you were saying with identity capital, there's so many things for you to explore and learn about and different paths to go down. I just read this book called The Midnight Library.
Oh my God, I'm reading that right now.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, chime in if I'm not explaining
I'm
this
only like
correctly.
20% of the way in.
I won't spoil anything. No spoilers. But it's basically about this girl who has the opportunity to live all the lives that she didn't and go down all these paths that she wasn't able to, or she didn't in her first life because it was, you know, a singular life. So, but anyways, it's this idea of like getting to try all these things, and we have our whole lives ahead of us. And if I really wanted to, by the time that I was 80, I could be a fucking astronaut if I wanted to. Like, I'd go to school for that. I'd work my ass off and like figure out, you know, get to know Mr. Elon Musk and get up in the sky. But anyways, it's this like really weird balance and not knowing where we fit in that. And it's like, am I supposed to be exploring and creating and doing all these random things, or am I supposed to be setting myself up to like be really strong on one path? And I don't know what the answer is. It's like trying to figure out how to do both. But then when I'm trying to do both, I'm like, how do I brand that? And then it's like, no, free yourself from that. But it's hard, especially as a content creator.
Well, social media rewards you for being niche and having this like perfect bow, just literally like from the algorithm that can help you grow quicker. But I always try to think like way long term, like not just through 30s, like 40s, 50s. I'm their biggest fan to the Foster Sisters podcast. It's the world's first podcast. Like, they're so funny.
Oh my God, I love them.
They're so funny. And they always talk about how they really didn't figure out anything about their lives, what they wanted to do until their 30s. And that in itself is very freeing, because I think social media really puts a lot of pressure on you to think that you need to have everything together and be making this amount of money, doing this, being with this person, married, whatever it might be, wherever you live, by a certain age. And they always talk about how that just wasn't the case for them and they don't agree with it. So that's really freeing. But also, I'm like, I'm sure I know for a fact there will be career ventures that I end up doing in my lifetime that I would never right now think that I would do. Even before I was talking, like, it's just the first thing that I want to build though. Like, there's other things that I'm going to want to do, different industries I want to be a part of. Like, I've always like, the niche thing is just not me, because I don't fit into like a niche. So it's always something that I've kind of like been annoyed about, because I'm like, I know I would grow faster. This would be better for a business, which is really tricky when our business is tied to like us personally. And I think that's where maybe it's unhealthy, but I think people relate to this with or without being like on the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely like a really difficult thing to navigate, because both are like praised.
Yeah. So how I've come to terms with the first part of this, of like feeling like you need to brand yourself, I talked to Christian Navarro, who is like a brand genius. He started in advertising, and then he did brand for Spotify and Snapchat, and now he's at Stacey Benet's new company, which is called Creatively. Anyways, he had this notion that a brand is not the froofy stuff of like, how do I look and how am I, you know, portraying myself and what clothes am I wearing, and like the very external stuff, and even the what am I doing on a day-to-day basis. His argument was that a brand is your values, basically, and how your values come through. And that is really freeing in the sense where I'm sure my values will shift with different phases of my life, but through and through, I'm going to hope that they're, you know, positive, good moral values. And if I can get that message through and that part of me through, then I'm free to like be whoever else I want to be and explore these different things and not feel like I'm, completely different person on a day-to-day basis.
I like that a lot.
Isn't that it's really good, and it's hard. Like, I would challenge everyone listening to get out a sheet of paper and just write down your values. And it can be something so simple like spending time with family, or something really big like I don't know, a certain like spiritual goal that you have, or whatever it is. And if you're pushing those through when you meet people, or when you're online, or when you're just by yourself and you're hanging out, that's what a true brand is. And that is like super freeing to me, at least.
Yeah, because it's not like focusing on the small stuff that really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. That's really helpful. I want to talk a little bit about kind of living in the present, and then also like being on the internet. And again, I think this is stuff that a lot of people can relate to with or without, being as on the internet as we live our lives, I think, or just our jobs or whatever it might be. I think it's like a really hard thing to balance.
Yeah.
And also it's for me, I don't know. I think as I get older, I become more private. And I think that kind of hurts sometimes, like growth-wise and things like that. But also, I feel like I'm giving too much of myself away. Like, I know we've talked about this before, just kind of in general, like, I don't really like the word balance, but like some sort of like, there's like a trade-off, and I guess balance that comes with that. Mm. But how do you deal with, documenting versus just living in the present?
Yeah, I think I've realized, I think I saw a TikTok or something recently. You know what's so funny is when I was on my trip recently, every time somebody said like I saw a TikTok, we changed it with I read an article about, and it just makes you sound so much smarter. It's like, what's the difference? Yeah, like somebody could write an article about it.
Yeah.
Anyways, I read an article about how social media is like a different world. Like, if you think about it as you're looking into this like, let's say we're living in a simulation. I'm not saying we are, but if we were, then social media is the simulation that we are creating. It's like the little game and the fake world that we're making, which there's nothing wrong with. Like, that's fun and it's curated and people are really talented at doing that. But I think when you can step away and realize that that's just not real life, and like, this is also kind of like a breakthrough that I've had, because I feel like I've never really put myself online ever, and I don't think I ever really will. And I don't do that intentionally, but I was thinking about like all of my relationships that I have with people. So I have a relationship with my boyfriend, and one with my mom, and one with my cousin, and one with my dog, and my dad, and all these different people, whoever. I'm a different person to every single person in my life. And it doesn't matter how close I am with them, or if it's like two random people I've met once. Everyone is going to have a different perception of you, and you're going to put on a different front, intentionally or not intentionally. It's the same thing with the internet. Like, I cannot fathom hundreds of thousands of people perceiving me. Like, my brain will just simply never wrap itself around that. So when I'm talking to a camera, I am talking to one person, and that is one persona that I put on. And that is like one personality that I'm putting out. And whether it's like conscious or subconscious, I have to accept that like it's one way of being perceived. And like, I'm totally going on a tangent from the original question, but
no, this is good.
It's like it's curated. I mean, you're a different curated person for everyone. So as long as you don't attach yourself to that one persona too much, then who cares? It's literally all fun and games. Like, I know Brianna Chicken Fry talks about how like we're just floating on a rock in space, and it's literally so true. And like, yes, it's so powerful to have an online presence or a presence with a particular person or whatever, but you have so many abilities to like show who you are to people, and to be so attached to that one image is just like devastating, you know? So I don't know. It's hard. I think just not trying to get too attached. I find that when I'm my happiest, the last thing I want to do is pull out a camera.
Same.
So you know, like I'd like to show, you know, the really fun moments or the really horrible moments. Like the last thing I want to do when I'm like crying in bed is pull out a camera. So it's a curation. And like as long as you know that as a viewer and as like a creator, then you can like make amends with it, I feel like.
And I think it's healthy. Like when people say, oh, Instagram is a highlight reel, almost as kind of a dig towards Instagram. Like I think I would be willing to bet for the large majority of people, it's probably not healthy if you're crying on your bathroom floor to like pull out a phone and record it. Like maybe that is how some people process and that's good for them, right? But like for me personally, I need to handle things in the way that I know is best for me. And I can't like Instagram story it.
Yeah.
And like maybe that works for some people, right? But it doesn't for me, and that is okay. Like there can be a boundary. Like now I think especially since moving and I live in a city where not like my friends, none of them are on the internet. Most of them don't even post on Instagram, right? I don't want to pull out a camera all the time. And I also want a nice like balance.
Right.
And I think, you know, I'm sure a lot of people relate to that, but then I feel like, oh, well, I didn't get anything, or like that is such a good part of my life, I want to share it. But then part of me is also like, no, I actually kind of don't.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like it's just weird having grown up on the internet. And then when certain times I'm like really open, and then other times I kind of pull back more.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily always know what the correlation is that like makes me pull back, but I definitely have been feeling it lately.
Yeah. I think it also is so natural to go in waves of, and again, this isn't just for content creators, but just in terms of sharing yourself with people. It's like sometimes you have so much you want to say to someone, and like whether you're excited or you're really upset or you have something on your mind or whatever. And there's just some times where you're like content living in your head and like just chilling with yourself and either working things out or just being there for yourself, you know, or just chilling. And it's like fine to do both. And it's so it's just crazy how much like we share now and how much we're expected to share. And I think it's so cool in some ways where we can like share our human experience with other people, but other times it's like this is the Truman Show and we need to turn this off now.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's like such a cool tool, but being in control of it is super important.
And not letting it control your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people that I follow on the internet, I like when they have lives off the internet. I think it makes everything more interesting.
Yeah.
How do you deal with, I know you posted a video like not that long ago of just feeling like you were really in a rut. How did you kind of like pull yourself out of that?
I'm such a journal person. And I think when I did that video, I mean, obviously there was more, you know, components to this, but there was like a 2-week period where I left my journal in the rain and it was ruined and I needed to get a new one. And I didn't have a journal for those 2 weeks and it was awful. Like to me, journaling is therapy. And it really affected me. And that was such a learning period for me. And I mean, of course, there was like a gajillion other things going on. I don't want to, you know, just boil it down to that. But it just... The part about journaling that I love is I'm able to sit down with myself and identify and like it feels like pull out of myself everything that's bothering me or upsetting me or making me anxious or stressed or excited or happy or whatever. And when I feel like I don't have the ability to do that, it just makes however I'm feeling like so much worse because it's just all these things now circling in my head. And like I can't do it on a piece of paper, which I should probably get over, but that's just like a personal problem. So I think for that, it was like a lot of stuff was just living in my head for too long and I just needed to get it out. But I don't know, it's natural. It's like it's waves and it's so weird because I feel like a lot of people feel that stuff at the same time.
Yes.
Right?
Everyone was in this like 2-week period rut in August that I was feeling. I know my other friend Margot, like I know she posted and we were talking about it, and then literally like everyone on like private stories and stuff, I'm like, everyone is feeling the same thing at the same time. It's very odd.
It's very odd.
Very, very weird.
What's going on?
I know. I'm like, I don't know.
So back to that simulation theory.
No, literally. I'm like, maybe. I want to talk too about, well, actually, no, before we even go to that, I think it's really important to remember that it is very normal to like get in a rut and like life comes in waves, emotions come in waves. that's going to happen. Because when I'm in a rut, I almost treat it like the world is over for me. Everything's over. I really like catastrophize in my thinking. And it is like literally like part of the human experience. It is so normal. But when you're in it, it like, especially like a longer period, I don't mean like a few days, I mean like a few weeks, months, whatever, it can really feel like everything is just out of whack, and you can just catastrophize in your thinking, and it's important to remember that it's like really normal.
It is. It's really normal, and it's also totally like great to just sit in it. And I feel like there's so many things where it's like when you're in a rut, like do this, and I'm probably part of that problem, but it's okay to feel that way, and it's totally normal. I think the way that I like to cope with that is learning more about myself, where it's like, okay, I feel this way. What is making it worse? What's making it feel better? If I can figure anything out, like that's a win for me, even if it's not immediate. But whether it's like, oh, I didn't realize that this person was like such a support for me. Or even it's like, I know that when I feel that way, if I'm with my dog, I'm like chilling. And like that is just makes me feel so like warm and nice, whatever. So using that as an opportunity to just learn about yourself, and not like, I'm not trying to make this like make it productive, but you know, it's completely normal. And I think it's, I agree with you.
It's really important to be able to sit in negative emotion.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can do it, no problem. And then other times I can feel myself avoiding all negative emotion or any sort of, not even conflict with someone else, but almost like conflict with myself. Yeah. It's hard to sit with those feelings, but it's incredibly important. Yeah. And I do think sometimes the only way to get over something is like, it's like what you have to like get through it. That there's like a cliche about that. And I do think sometimes you really just need to sit with it and learn that it's okay too.
If you are in a situation where you feel like you're avoiding it, how do you get to the root of it? Like, what's your method of just facing it head on?
So I have a problem where I struggle with knowing where an emotion is coming from sometimes. So that's something I really work out in therapy. And I can pretty much always come to the conclusion within myself or with my therapist. Journaling is a big thing. The way you feel about journaling and getting things out is how I feel about working out. Like, I do my best thinking. I really, on one end, I feel like I can completely zone out. On the other end, like, the solution, I'll come to it when I'm, like, moving my body for some reason. Yeah. But I will really, it's journaling, and then I think it's just finding the root for me. Like, a lot of it, I think, is upbringing or, like, past relationship fallouts, things like that. I've learn to realize a thing with me too is like seasonally, I know that I normally don't feel my best in August. So if I'm not feeling my best, I don't try to make a big deal out of it anymore, because I just know that I tend to feel the worst in August. Like, something about the time of year, I don't know what it is. The way people describe like seasonal depression is how I feel in August.
Interesting.
So I know that about myself, and it's identifying patterns too. If I consistently feel this type of way, recently I realized that I was, you know, feeling some type of emotion, and I was like, this is the time where I actually need to like go to my friends, which is why we are so lucky to have so many friends who do the same thing that we do, that we're like legitimately friends. And I went to a friend, and the first thing she asked me was literally what the problem was, but I didn't want to admit it to myself because that would mean that I would have to change a friendship in my life. And nothing against that person, just that like it's not healthy for me. And they're not bad, it's nothing like that, but I was like, that's the root of where this is coming from. But I was kind of lying to myself because I knew deep down that that was what it was, but I didn't want to admit to it. Right. And I didn't, because I knew that that would mean change, and I love that person, whatever. And it's not their fault at all, but it's a combination of things. I think talking to someone, journaling, working out, therapy, which is the same thing as talking to someone, I guess. And it's not the same thing, but just getting it out somehow. I don't know. It's definitely it's been a struggle though. Like, I will feel a lot of emotion sometimes and have like literally no idea where they're coming from. Yeah. Which I guess is probably a little bit normal too. Yeah. But it's really easy for us to like think that we're the only person in the world who's ever felt this way. And, you know, it's like, okay, I need to get over myself. Like, there are other people.
You're not special.
Yeah, you're not special, guys. Okay, I want to talk about relationships. Ooh. And also like just feeling lonely and isolated. Yeah. So not ooh.
the sad part of relationships.
Yeah, I think I definitely feel a lot lonelier, I think, more often than people would think. Naturally, just because I'm a really outgoing person. But I find that I feel that way, and then I feel kind of dumb voicing it too because I have so many great friends and whatever. It's really not about that. But can you just expand on just like relationships and feeling isolated?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a huge difference between, I mean, this is, I'm not the first person to say this, but huge difference between being alone and being lonely. And again, both of these are completely valid. I personally love being alone.
Me too.
But I mean, holy shit, what a insane past 2 years it's been, and like so isolating. And that's something I'm kind of exploring now, where it's like, okay, we're kind of like coming out of the pods now and we're seeing people and like we're getting to see friends who can travel again. And there's so many great parts of that, but it's also really scary. And it's this weird juxtaposition of this pod mentality that we've been in for 2 years, where it's like you have your people and that's who you're really comfortable with and you open up with, and that's like who your real, circle is. And then you have the entire world at your fingertips. And like whether it's other people hanging out with each other, looking at other people living their lives, or whatever it is, and just being able to connect with people, if it's not social media, if it's like Zoom or, I don't know, you're watching online lectures or Netflix or whatever it is, like there's so much community outside of yourself where it's this really weird balance of like, how many people are actually in my life? And that's so, that number to me is just, I have no idea. And it's like I'll reconnect with people and be like, oh my God, I forgot that we have this incredible friendship because I've been so focused on the same 5 people for the past year, which is like really exciting, but it's also weird to be in that situation. So I don't know. It's so normal to feel lonely, but it's also, I'm like ready to be alone for like 2 weeks and just sit by myself and enjoy that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird balance.
That's how I feel right now. But something, it's kind of stupid, but something that I was thinking about this week, we were talking, I don't know who I asked, but we were talking about like your close friends list. And I think I have like between 80 to 90 people on my close friends list. And then it got me thinking, like, that's a lot of people that I'm genuinely like, oh, I would be like your friend, right? Yeah. Which is, granted, I've also like lived a few places, different communities, people, whatever. But also I went to my contacts and I have like over 1,000 phone numbers in my phone. Like, isn't that so insane?
Yeah.
Like I don't think we were like really created for like that much human contact. Like back in the day, that's, wasn't humanly possible. But it's insane. I don't know, just the number of that. I just keep thinking about it. I'm like, that is so many more people than I thought.
So you're proving my theory right now that we all think about the same things
at
the same time. Because
yeah.
this is my next podcast episode. And I was talking to a past professor about something called Dunbar's number. So Dunbar is this mathematician or anthropologist or something. Those are very different, but you'll see why I'm confused. He basically came up with this number, which is 150. Now it's closer to 200, but it's basically the amount of people that your brain can like realistically handle. And the size of social circles that human brains can fully function at. And that number is between 150 to 200. And Dunbar argues that that's dependent on the size of the brain and kind of like nurture, nature, whatever. My professor said it's the size of your heart, so you can look at it either way. But it was so encouraging to me to hear that number, because I was like, okay, I can name, like, if I had to sit down with myself and name 150 people, even if I'm not close friends with them, but if I could reach out and say like, hey, miss you, what's up, how are you, reconnecting. It's nice for me to have that number, because you look at your Facebook, like, remember back in middle school on Facebook, you're like, oh my God, they have more friends than me. It's like friend.
I think I have like probably 2,000 friends on Facebook.
It's insane.
It's
like,
so dumb.
I don't know 2,000 people. Like, I'll go on Facebook and there's like pregnancy announcements from people that I
don't recognize them.
It's
I have
like,
no idea.
It's so insane.
Yeah.
But at one point in your life, you were like, yes, you should be on my friends list.
Yeah.
It's the same with LinkedIn. It's like you are encouraged to have more than 500 connections, which like from a networking perspective, I totally understand. But does it morph our perception of how many people in our network we should have? And like the close friends list, I think there's a maximum of 100 people. So it's like, should I have 100 close friends? Like that's a lot of close friends to have, and like very interesting wording on Instagram's part, right?
Yeah.
So, oh man, it's so interesting. But yeah, the 150, I'm like happy to sit with that number.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Right? We can agree with that.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, good.
It's interesting too, just moving around. I don't know. This is kind of my problem too, is that I've always been more of a floater. Like, I feel like, YouTube wise, I definitely have like my group, but for the large majority of my life, even though I definitely have had groups of friends, growing in Texas, I definitely had groups at different times, but for the large majority, I was the floater. So I would have a couple friends in one group, a couple friends in the next group, a couple friends in the next group, and it would just, it would like expand my circle almost to the point where like I had like my really close friends, but my really close friends were not really friends with each other,
right.
So then it makes it seem bigger than it was. And I think also, I mean, even on the topic of friend groups, like I hear this all the time where people are like really, they feel like forced that they need to have a friend group. And I am such a friend group person. I would much prefer it to be one group of friends. It's easier. It's more efficient. You're together. Like I get the appeal of it, but it's like really unrealistic. And I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves. And I definitely remember feeling weird. Like I think because my friends were in different groups and I was always kind of like going back and forth, it gave me this feeling of not really fitting in or like fitting a mold, which anyone who hears, like who knew me growing up would be like, shut up, because it's like I had friends. And I don't mean it in the way of like, oh, I'm different or anything like that. It's just I didn't just have like my group.
Yeah.
And so it does give you this weird feeling of like, oh, well, I'm not fully this way. I'm not fully that way. So maybe I don't fit this certain mold.
Yeah.
And it's like this, I don't know, it's just like really weird like dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons to both. I kind of feel the same way where like for the majority, I'm definitely a floater, but I've had friend groups and it does make it easier to compartmentalize. But I think the beauty of being a quote floater, just having friends in different places, even if it's like one friend from this class that you took and one friend from this vacation you went on or whatever, is how cool is that you've like expanded your community to all of these different types of people, and being able to, it's so like refreshing being able to tap into these different groups and not feel stuck in one place. And like I'm even going to expand this argument to why I love New York so much. Like in a group of friends, if I was out to dinner with people, right? Somebody would be in finance, somebody would be in theater, somebody would be an actor, somebody would be a podcaster, somebody's in fucking retail. And it's wonderful because it feels like you're dipping your toes into all of these different spaces without having to do all of it. So I think there's a lot of beauty to being a floater. But obviously having a friend group is definitely more efficient.
Yeah.
Just get that birthday list done.
You're done.
Don't
It's
have to worry
easy.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I am the same way. I also just like different kinds of people. And I think even like expanding off of that topic, something that I really, and I don't mean this in a controversial way, but in 2020, I think I definitely fell into the trap of I could only be friends with people who thought and felt the exact same way with me about every single thing in my life. Not just, I think it started politically, obviously, and then it went even just socially, even just like I'm talking like random, like they say on the internet, like you can't, like now it's like, oh, I like orange and someone likes red and then that's offensive, right? Like things like that. I feel like I really almost pigeonholed myself in a way where I was only talking to or with people who pretty much thought the same way that I did. And I really didn't like that about myself. Like I didn't like where I had gotten with that. I think, again, I'm not talking about like horrible things. I'm talking about just across the board, right? Having different opinions, having different views, having different upbringings, whatever that might be. I think it's incredibly important. I want to be at tables with people who think totally different than me because that's how I learn, that's how I grow. Even if I'm not going to agree with them, I just think it's almost like a lost art. I think it's incredibly important to be able to do, and I think it's incredibly important to surround yourself with people who think differently than you do.
Yeah.
In a healthy way.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the idea of the brand and the values. It's like if you can, let certain values shine through, then you do you. Like, learn about different things, hear about other people's opinions, and stay true to your values and your morals. And, at the end of the day, you know what you believe in and what you stand for. But yeah, I mean, that goes for anything. Like, you think you're going to get ahead in your career because you only agree with people that have the same opinions as you? Like, good fucking luck.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
And you're just not, I think you become, you're almost like a one-dimensional person if that's the only thing. Like, I want to hear, I don't know, I just want to be around people who think differently than me, who do different things than me. I don't want to be in this, certain bubble. So I think also, subconsciously, that was kind of the appeal too as a floater. I like different kinds of people and different kinds of worlds, and so maybe that's why I always kind of did that growing up.
Yeah,
but it kind of stressed me out socially. I will say.
Yeah, but I feel like you would thrive with that.
Yeah, I definitely am. I'm actually an introvert, shockingly, but I like different kinds of people. I'm very outgoing, and I like talking to whoever, but I definitely need my time alone. Monday through Wednesday, you will not hear from me, you will not talk to me, nothing.
An extroverted introvert.
Yeah. I was talking about this with Brooke and Danielle, and we all came to the conclusion that we were. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know why.
I feel like most people are,
I
but
do too.
I could just,
who isn't though? Taylor King. True extrovert.
That's true. That's
true extrovert.
True. I definitely know true extroverts, but maybe most people, no, I'm just generalizing, but yeah, I mean, I just love my alone time. So
me too. I think people confuse being an extrovert with being outgoing too, because I did.
That's true.
I was like, oh, I'm definitely an extrovert just because I was loud and could talk to someone.
Yeah.
And it's no, that's not the same thing.
Yeah, that's very true.
How do you deal with comparison, especially in your 20s?
Comparison to what?
It could be anything. Comparing your career, comparing yourself to who you want to be, who you were, to the next person.
I don't think I let myself,
or comparing to what you think you should be at that age. That's more so what I mean.
It's all just a game of what ifs, and that's so unhealthy. I think the number one thing I'd never want to do in my life is regret, and I've seen regret really hurt people that I'm very close to, and it sucks to live a life where you're oh, I wish I did this, or I should have done this with this. And that's what comparison is. When it comes down to it, it's if I just did this, then I would be here, or I would be better than this, or whatever it is. And it's comparison is regret. And I think it's healthy to set goals for yourself, but just set the goals and just keep them there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be something that you're constantly comparing yourself to. I don't know. It just gets so unhealthy. I've definitely compared myself to other people, but I just mute them. The mute button on Instagram is such a beautiful thing.
It really is.
I didn't actually think it would work. And then it worked.
Yeah, because you're not seeing it every day.
Yeah, you're not seeing it every day. And I think that goes for comparison with yourself. If you set the goal and just set it aside and you're not thinking about it every day, and you're treating it the same as muting somebody on Instagram, and when you want to go back and see what they're up to, you can. But it's why put yourself in this situation where you're always thinking about what you're not or what you don't have? It's just which obviously is easier said than done. But I don't know. At least I just feel really, really grateful to be where I am right now, where if I start to compare, it feels like a disservice. And it's bitch, look how much you have. Just enjoy it.
But I think that gratitude and the mute button, controlling what you're taking, what you're taking in, whether that be certain relationships you have in your life, things people say, Instagram, social media, whatever. But I will say, even just a gratitude list in the morning, honestly, it doesn't sound like it's going to do much. When you're oh, that's nice, whatever. It actually changes your life. It really has made when I'm actively doing it, it really does make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I've dealt with comparison literally until the past like 2 months, which sounds stupid because I'm like, I just turned 24. Like, it's not that I've never compared myself, but I think it's hit harder this summer for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I had to learn or that I'm currently in the process of learning. And I feel like I'm kind of out of it. I think I was just in a weird rut and I was vulnerable and like it was honestly the perfect storm and that's what happened. But the number one thing, I'm like, I have to control what I'm consuming, and that includes friendships and relationships.
Yeah. I mean, comparison goes in waves too. It's like
Yes.
it's all like a natural kind of flow of like ebbs and flows into your life. But yeah, I think gratitude is a good like, you know, counteract against that.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Kenzie, it's been such a pleasure. And look at this space. I'm so honored to be here.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm excited because we're hanging out tonight. So
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to see what you're wearing.
Yeah, I know. I'll right after and be like, okay, so this is my idea. Yeah. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at margot.lee. Same with YouTube. And my podcast is called Working Title.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.